and welcome back to the CODESHO podcast, everybody. Matt and I are pretty excited about this episode. This is going to be the first time that we've had somebody on that's kind of still in the learning process, hasn't really started a job yet, and it's kind of going to be a cool episode because we're with Gregory here, who's one of my best friends and was also one of the groomsmen at my wedding. I'm not really sure what. Maybe I influenced you a little bit to get into programming, but I'm not exactly sure. We kind of want to get into that in this episode. But I guess to kick things off, just kind of tell us, like, I guess to answer that question, what did get you into programming and kind of where are you at right now? Where are you looking to be in the next like year or so?
So I mean, I've always kind of been a little interested in it, but never really knew too much about it. Um, in high school, I took a couple classes, but the classes we had really didn't teach us anything. Like, our teacher was a librarian, and she just kind of said, "Teach yourself." So,
Were
you
you
know,
so you were learning programming in high school?
yeah.
Like what were you learning? Like C or Python or
It was Python, and
okay.
it wasn't really much. Like, it's
And
like one kid knew what to do in there, and he just kind of showed us along the way.
what?
Um,
Were
wasn't
you in this
anything
class
that
too, Cole?
No, when?
Okay.
What year was this? What year in high school?
Oh, it was my sophomore, I think, maybe freshman.
I did go
It
to the
was
same high
early
school
on.
with you for sophomore year, but I didn't take a programming
Oh.
class.
Yeah, I think it was freshman then.
Yeah,
But
we talked a ton in grade school, like because Gregory and I went to school together from second
yeah,
grade until like seventh grade,
Mm.
and we talked a ton. At one point, we said we were going to build the next RuneScape when RuneScape was like all the hype, and so we would like look at like the loading screen and it said like Java, and we're like, dude, we gotta whatever that is, like we gotta learn that.
That sounds promising.
Yeah, and lo and behold, years later,
Yeah.
I've written quite a bit of Java, but
Yeah.
not RuneScape. Haven't built RuneScape yet. Maybe in the future.
It's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. And so right now you're learning Python, right?
a little bit. Yeah, I'm taking a class right now through the college I'm going through. Um, I wouldn't even really say
Go ahead.
it's
No, go ahead.
learning. It's mostly just a lot of copying out of the book, and so
That's I mean, to be honest, that's it. That's programming.
yeah,
Whenever I'm learning anything new, it really is like if you're learning graphics or whatever, for example, you get a tutorial book, or at least how I do it is I get that tutorial book and I just copy the examples. And then that way I have like I'll try to get some understanding of what it is. But yeah, like at the beginning, especially because you don't know how to do it, that's what it feels like. It feels like a lot of copying.
Is this at Texas
yeah.
Tech?
No, it's through South Plains, which is just a little south of Lubbock.
Is it like a community college?
Um, it's just a D3, I think. I honestly don't know.
It sounds like it's probably pretty similar to the one that I went to. And Matt and I have talked a ton about this on the podcast and like what it's like to learn programming at like even a university level, but maybe even a little bit less than like a typical like UNLV or A&M or whatever, like a higher level university. So like so far, what has your experience been like? Because Matt and I have like we've had different experiences for sure. So like has it been good so far? Is it productive? Do you feel like you're learning a lot? Is this the best way to learn? What do you think?
Um, I mean, I feel like it's all right. Like it's definitely not the best way to learn. I feel like I could benefit more if I was like in person, because a lot of it,
Yeah. Oh yeah, because
it
right
is
now,
just
especially,
copying.
and right now everything is just like online, like virtual, right?
Yeah. I'm taking all online classes, and it's just like quizzes and stuff. If I need to, I can just look it up on Quizlet, or
Yeah, I have been
because
there.
I don't want to fail something if I don't need to. But then,
Yeah. Man,
but
when I was in school and when I was a teacher, I used to tell people like study together. It's so hard to learn stuff on your own if you can just throw stuff. But yeah, like right now, obviously with what's happening in the world, that's a whole lot harder to do. That is gonna make it way more rough.
Are you online by choice or just because COVID is forcing you to?
by choice. This university, I think it's like a 30-40 minute drive from
Yeah.
Lubbock. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm going to take a couple classes in person next semester.
So how's it been like? Do you feel like you've learned a lot about Python? Like kind of where are you at right now in the curriculum?
Um, I mean, I wouldn't say like learning a lot, like critical thinking and stuff, like where you kind of build it, just, you know, like there's a problem, like code it or whatever. Like it's a lot of just getting familiar with the software, I guess, and um, just being comfortable with it, I guess. And, you know, if you need to Google something and like if you're having an issue with something, you can go find it, or, uh, you know, it's not like, it's not hard right now, but
Yeah. So what have you learned? Like, are you like variables, loops, functions? Like, what all have you learned?
yeah, a little bit of that. You know, first it started off with like strings and variables and um, just a whole bunch of stuff like that, little definitions and uh, yeah, and just how Python works.
So then,
First,
actually, can we go back a little bit? I'm kind of
yeah,
curious about this because I thought what Cole said was you're doing like a certification. It's not actually like a degree, but can you tell me about the certification? Like, are you just taking one programming class, but maybe you got to take like some English and math on the side, like a traditional even community college, or is it just programming? What's the thing that you're working on?
yeah. So I mean, there is like you know, math and stuff like that. Some of those courses. Um, but yeah, now, you know, it's like HTML course, Python, some other stuff. Um, and then the certificates are through Microsoft. And the way I understand it is once you take these courses through this college, then they pay for your test through Microsoft for their certification.
Oh, cool.
For Python?
Yeah. Uh, it's like it's 3 or 4 certificates. I can't remember exactly which ones, but yeah, no, it's Python, HTML, Java. Like I don't know if those are which certificates exactly. I just know like those are what we have to learn before they will let us take the test for the
Yeah.
certificates.
Here's the maybe cool thing. It's good if it's easy, right? Like that's good because so I have a couple of buddies actually who work at Microsoft, and one of the things that he said, because I was asking about a job a while ago, um, that I'd found, and like they have certain jobs that are only like they don't call them internships, which I'm sure they also have, but they have these jobs for like fresh out of college people or something like that. So it's probably a good thing if these courses are hosted by Microsoft, like the certification tests are hosted by Microsoft, because that might mean if you can do really well, like you can get that boost into one of these big companies that maybe like you get a different set of eyes on it, which could be really cool.
Yeah, and to me, they sound also like just resume points, which is
Oh
like
yeah.
everything when you're trying to get your
Yeah.
first job. Just
Yeah.
having stuff to put on there is really big.
Mm.
One question that I kind of want to know, this is one thing that I've been wanting to ask anybody that's going through it right now, because I definitely felt this way. I don't know if Matt did. Matt went through a really specialized gaming course at a university and then became a professor later. So he might be biased that the curriculum's really solid because he taught it, but
Because it was, yeah.
because it was. Um, but for me, like, dude, I had a really, really rough time going through because I couldn't really see the like real world application of what we were doing. Like, I'm like, cool, I'm learning what a string is and like
Yeah.
what is this, but like, what is this? What's the purpose? Like, what would I actually do? What application would somebody use that uses what I'm learning?
Mm.
Do you feel like that right now at all, or do you feel like you have a pretty good understanding of what you're doing?
Oh yeah, like I definitely feel that. Like I can imagine some like implications or whatever. But or like yeah, I definitely feel that way too.
What's the coolest thing you've built so far?
That I've built.
Yeah. Like
Um,
for like within the course. Like the course is like giving you tasks or assignments or something. What's the coolest thing that they've had you build? Or do they not have you build stuff?
I wouldn't really say like we build much of anything. It's mostly like a lot of little small assignments where it
Okay.
teaches you like one thing. I mean, I guess my HTML course, like learning all that, is cool to me.
'Cause you're
Learning how like websites work, you
yeah,
know,
you're
something
obviously
you interact
building
with every day.
some kind of a website.
Do you like
Yeah,
web dev?
So far, yeah, it's pretty cool. Just like I said, like learning how stuff works, like um, you know, like just looking at something that take for granted every day. You click buttons, and no one
Yeah,
really knows how it works, and you kind of know more than most people. Just even a week into this course of how it works.
Yeah.
for sure. Dude, I was telling, we had a guy on a podcast last week named Randy, and he's a game developer. So you can, and he's worked on like Halo, he's worked on
Oh,
Plants vs Zombies.
Plants vs Zombies, Bejeweled, all sorts of like AAA titles. Like, was it Warhammer or was it something else? It was something like that. Not Warhammer, but
I don't remember. He just got hired at Respawn, so he's gonna be working on like Apex.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, this guy's worked on all these AAA titles. Obviously, it takes a massive team to build something like Halo. And we can, especially now that I mean, you're obviously entering the world and you're seeing like how hard it can be just to get something on screen sometimes, much less make an alien shoot a phaser at Master Chief. Like, it's crazy. Like, some of the stuff these game devs do is insane. And so, one thing that I was joking with him about is like, he makes me feel like, because we do a lot of web dev, we do a lot of app dev and stuff like that. I don't know if like there's a lot of parallels between apps and websites, but like in terms of complexity, they're pretty similar. And it just makes me feel like an idiot because I'll super struggle with some web thing or some app thing, and I'm like, these guys over here are writing complex physics code to make gravity work certain ways, like just so insane. These new games have bullet drop, and like I'm over here like, this amount isn't subtracting from this one properly. What is going on
I'm
here?
getting a
Like,
rounding error in when I add these dollars together.
dude, exactly. It's so crazy. And just getting into the game world too lately. I'm not an expert by any means, but just trying to learn it. Even just 2D games are just mind-bogglingly hard
to learn.
at times. So yeah, it's crazy. But I would say the reason I'm kind of interested in whether or not you like web dev is because I definitely liked it, and I liked app development because you kind of, as you're building, you get to see the results of what you're building, and you get to see something that you've used a ton. When you're using like Python, which I learned in college as well, and like C and C++, like I'm like, I've never used anything that uses these, or as far as I know, I've never used anything that uses these languages. And for sure, the things that I'm making as assignments are nothing close to anything that I've ever used before. But a website is. I've definitely used a website, and I can appreciate that.
Well, Python, uh, they have like a framework like Laravel, right? The Django.
Django, yeah.
Django. Oh, I don't know how to say it. It
Yeah,
just starts with the. It starts with the D's.
Yeah, Django.
Yeah. So like that's as far as I know, it's like a fancy, fast, like back end framework.
That's true, and
that's Python.
Well, but even backend is kind of conceptually really hard when you're a new developer because like you get the front end part, you get the thing that the user sees, that makes sense. But like all of this stuff going on in the background, it kind of goes back to like what you always say, which is like you need to experience the problem and like before you can appreciate the solution. And I think that was the same like Gregory, you might understand this too. So I was telling Randy and Matt the last episode that I built a little web app for these guys that I was working for at my first job, and I managed a team of like data entry people. And I had this little web app that I built for them that would help them like track their progress on what they were doing. Doesn't really matter what they were doing, but it nonetheless it kind of helped them track their progress, and like they had like a list of work that they had to do, and this helped them like stay on track or whatever. Anyways, the problem was that I'm like, okay, I've got this web app and I know what to show them, but like when this person logs in, it needs to show them the same thing that this person is seeing, and when they change something, this person needs to see that change. So like there's a piece missing here. Like how do I make that happen? Like even with JavaScript and CSS and HTML, like I can't do that. Like if that person changes something, there needs to be like a database. At the time, I didn't understand that term or what that meant or why I needed a backend, but I used a Google Sheets, which is like Excel, and I was having this little web app communicate with a Google Sheet spreadsheet through like an API to like update that spreadsheet so that whenever the next user logged in, they would see the thing that changed for the other person. And like, so at the time, like I couldn't wrap my head around what a backend was until I did that. And then I was like, this makes sense now, which is kind of when I started to learn. But yeah, that's a good point though. Python, I hated Python in school because I didn't understand how I could use it. But Django is a huge framework that people build web apps in. There's a ton of jobs for it. So, but the problem is that like
going from where he is now to to using Django is that's a big leap.
That's a huge leap. But not only that, syntax is a huge part of learning, but like the actual framework is half the battle. I mean, like
Yeah,
just knowing Swift isn't enough to build an app. You
of
have to
course, yeah.
know the UI kit framework or the Swift UI framework or
Mhm.
whatever. Same thing with Android. Learning Java is not enough to make an Android app.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a ton you don't know
yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like making that transition is kind of hard. So I guess that kind of leads to maybe the more fun question for you. Based on what you've learned so far, or just in general, like what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you see yourself building based on what you've learned so far? Like what's your dream job?
Oh man, like right now, I don't know specifically. Like you know I've looked into like on YouTube, just looked up people coding games and stuff like that. That looks fun. Looks pretty complicated. Like this one video I was watching, this guy was just trying to get clouds in his game, and then like he just started doing all this research on clouds and formulas of how clouds move and stuff like that. So that seems a bit extreme. Still fun though.
Yeah.
Um, and then I mean, really all of it seems cool. Like no matter which way I go, I probably
But
won't
is
be upset.
Yeah, that's a good attitude to have. But is there something? So I mean, you kind of covered this. Like I don't want to jump around too much, but I'm going to. Uh, so like, what is the thing that got you to sign up for this certificate? Like you said, you took like I feel like we jumped a little bit. You said you took some Python in school in high school. You're not in high school anymore, so there was a gap at some point. And then, so what made you decide to get back into programming?
Yeah, so I went to Texas Tech and I was majoring in psychology, and then around my junior year I just decided that's not what I wanted to do. Dropped out for a couple of years, and
People are crazy. Let me go to computers.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and then I was like computers. It's always been something that's kind of interested.
Mm.
And yeah, I found some courses at a college nearby that were cheap enough to go to, and I was like, I'm gonna do it.
But like
Can't
so
sit around all day.
what's your driver to like keep you moving? Like what makes you want to keep doing this? Like is it a passion for games or programming, or do you want to make money? Like what's the driver there?
um, I mean, yeah, money is
Money's a good
good.
answer.
Good answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't go wrong with that. It's something that I do enjoy learning, and it's fun so far, at least. And it's so far, there's nothing I don't like about it. And
Cool. Cool.
yeah, it's obviously important because it's enjoyable to learn,
Oh yeah.
and
Uh,
I feel like it's something I can make a career out of at some point.
absolutely. So, when did you start? Like, it sounds like you're only taking one course right now. Did you just start this certification, like just recently, like this semester or whatever?
Yeah, I just started this semester. I'm
Okay.
taking 4 classes right now, 4 courses.
Which courses are they?
There's
The math and
intro to Python, intro to HTML, just the business computer applications, just like Word and stuff like that.
mm,
And then oh man, what is the other one right now? I can't think of it. Oh, logic and design. It's probably the one I'm struggling with most, honestly.
what's
Yeah, what
that?
is that like?
What's that course?
It's talking all about like really nothing to even do with like writing code. It's basically like what you do before it, like making flow charts of how you want the code to work. And
A little bit of like
yeah,
project management.
Or like UI?
yeah, I assume so. I mean, yeah, I mean, it talks a little bit about uh, like in the if you have a job, you're working with other people, like it's good to, make a flow chart, and each little shape in the flow chart means something specific. I don't know like how much this applies to the real world, but there's definitely some stuff worth learning in there.
It does apply a little bit more than I would have admitted a couple years ago, but now every once in a while you do have to like illustrate things for the
Mhm,
team. Like
mhm.
this is what this is going to I mean, I just gave a presentation not too long ago at work about why we need to change to the MVVM design
Yeah, yeah,
pattern
yeah.
and like that required some flow charts and some designs to like get buy-in from everybody and help everybody understand why are we even doing this? Like what value does it add? I wouldn't say it's a major part of the job, but
here's the thing that even we have knowledge lacking, because most of what you've worked in and also most of what I've worked in has been smaller companies that are startups.
yeah.
Right. And we're just like coding furiously.
Yeah.
But remember what Sean said. Sean, when he was on the podcast, he said he wanted to make an update. He proposed some update to his company, and they wanted him to write like a white paper on it.
Yeah.
So maybe at bigger companies, this stuff, like I wouldn't immediately discount this, because
Yeah.
like there's gaps in my knowledge too about that. But
I had a course called systems something in design, systems architecture and I don't know, something like that. And it sounds very similar. It's one of those courses that at the time when I'm taking it, I'm like, what in the world? Like, it's kind of like learning binary. Like when you're in school and you're just like, I still don't use binary, but that was a really valuable thing to learn and understand early on. I get the value of it now, but it was probably not the most appropriate time to learn, possibly. I don't know, but in hindsight, it kind of is. Like the professor teaching binary back then, I didn't understand. And again, even now, it doesn't have any value, but I understand why he taught that first. And I think the systems design, this course that he's into, kind of sounds the same way, where it's like you're not really going to understand why this matters, and it probably still won't matter that much later on, but like you'll have a better understanding or appreciation for why they taught you that, maybe, kind of thing.
So I think, and I'm not sure, obviously I'm not an expert at this either. It seems like there's kind of like two general thoughts about like the approach to teaching stuff. One is start at the high level. Like that's how you always say you want to learn.
Yeah.
Start at the high level. Here, we're going to make a website. What's binary? Who cares? Right? What's a flowchart? Who cares? Right? And then once you have made some websites, you're going to do it wrong a lot, right? But I think at that point, learning about the operating system and learning about like the behind the scenes of like how networking works becomes more interesting once because like it's not stuff you're using day to day, but once you get into this world, you're like, oh yeah, that is interesting. Wait, what was Steve Jobs doing?
Yeah.
Like, and then the other one is like the reverse of that, starting at the bottom, building up from like the foundations.
Right.
And I don't know which one's better.
I guess the frustration is, and I don't know if Greg's dealing with this at all. Again, something that I dealt with and it frustrated me was like, I'm paying you guys, even though I'm at like a cheap college, I'm paying you guys a lot of money. It's still tens of thousands of dollars. And I have a very limited amount of time to get this degree done. And I'm not building the things that I want to build. I'm not building the things that are going to apply to my job. Why am I learning about binary? Why am I spending weeks learning about systems architecture? Let's learn how to build a website, dang it. Like that's what I'm going to do when I get out of here. So why are we learning about this? And in hindsight, I'm not super mad about all the stuff that we learned, but I would still say that like college did not start my trajectory into my actual job. It was taking a boot camp, and the boot camp focuses on high level. How do you build the thing that you want to build? And they're not going to like, the consequence of doing that is that they're going to tell you countless times, don't worry about this. Don't listen to me. Just do what I'm telling you to do. You're going to use this kind of loop because it makes more, you're going to use recursion here because it makes more sense. Don't worry about why we're doing this, or just do it. And then hopefully with enough repetition, you'll connect the dots and you'll be like, okay, this makes sense. I understand why they did it that way. And I wish that college was more like that, because if the idea is to get you prepped for a job, you have to do something that you're going to do at an actual job. I feel like you got the luxury of that when you guys built actual games at your university. And then when you leave, you're like, okay, I've worked with a team. I know what it is like to build a game engine. I know what it's like to build a game. I know what it's like to work with designers.
We've used source control. We've merged code with other people.
Yeah, that's another thing. We never use source control. Have you used source control? Have you used like Git or anything like that?
No.
How do you save your code?
Yeah, how do you save your code?
Just to my desktop.
How do you share your code with your teacher or the class? You just upload it to their website?
Well, we use Blackboard and just submit the file.
Okay.
Have you had a program yet that you've worked on personally or in school that took like weeks maybe to build?
I wouldn't even say hours. Like they're
Oh,
real
really?
small
Yeah.
assignments. Yeah.
I mean,
Ah, that's so unfortunate.
some of the assignments that I gave, obviously, like as the professor, I knew exactly how to do it, but it would take 10 minutes. For anybody who was not like knowledgeable, it would take 10 minutes. So it's like they were small assignments. So I understand. I understand where you're sitting, but that's part of the learning process too.
Is this frustrating to you? Do you wish that you could work on some longer term project?
Right now, honestly, I'm okay with the small assignments because if something goes wrong, there's not a lot to look at,
Mm.
and you can normally find what like I did wrong. I can find it and fix it, and I'm not overwhelmed at all.
Yeah,
Most
yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Have you seen big projects with like multiple files and it kind of seems overwhelming?
Well, I mean, for the HTML, I this past week I did a few assignments where it pulls from multiple files.
Cool.
But then, I mean, each file is, still pretty small, only 30, 50 lines of code.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, nothing that's like a lot, and just nothing that's like overwhelming, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. With the web stuff that you're doing, do you also do any like JavaScript or is it just HTML and CSS?
It's just HTML and CSS right now.
Okay. And do you are at some point are they gonna have you guys learn JavaScript or right now does it just seem like it's gonna be HTML CSS?
I think right now it's just HTML and CSS. Next semester, I am taking the next level course for HTML. I think it says something about Java in there, JavaScript. Yeah, I have to go look again.
Cool. Yeah.
So, okay, so this leads me to an interesting question. Because you, at one point, I kind of got you to start on that Colt Steele online boot camp or whatever, where he kind of teaches web
Yeah.
dev. Talk about like the difference between the two, and did you like one more than the other? Is the Colt Steele thing too fast paced? Did you learn more? Like, what do you think is the difference between the two?
Um. So yeah, starting out with that, it was all right. I feel like having the video there of him like showing you how he, does it is very helpful rather than reading out of a textbook. Um, but then I feel like with these courses, doing all these small little assignments, you get familiar with just using, I mean, Python or whatever, and you spend more time learning each little thing. Whereas in the course, you could spend 30 minutes, learn something, and forget it the next day, and then come back and like, oh yeah, I have to go read up on that again.
You
Whereas with
when
these
you say
courses,
or when you say course, you mean like in school?
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah, my school courses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what? Why do you think that you're more likely to forget it if you're at school versus the course? Because you actually saw him do it in the Udemy course.
No, I feel like in Udemy, I feel like I'm more likely to forget things because I mean, with that one, like the lessons seem more focused on a specific thing, whereas my school courses, it's like you learn one thing and then it builds on it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's kind of some of that in the Udemy thing too. I actually just looked at it again the other day, and he updated the whole course. And yeah, I spent just an hour or two, I think, on that, and I feel like it's a lot better. So I'm gonna spend more time in that.
Because yeah,
And
I think that's what I would do if I was going to college again. Like, depending on the level of college, DigiPen was pretty tough, but there are so many. Even though you're paying for it, and that's the unfortunate part, you're paying for college. It would be nice if that was just the whole package.
One stop shop.
Yeah, but like in reality, it is good to get these videos and as well as the textbook, as well as the assignments, right? So like if you already have a Udemy course, that's awesome, but they're usually only like $15, right? So like
Yeah.
my wife just bought a couple of them for Procreate, which is like an iPad app used for art. So she learned about Udemy, and we bought like 4 courses, and she's loving it. But
Yeah.
yeah, like if I was going back to school, whatever class I was taking, C++ or whatever, Python, I would also go and obviously I would either get LinkedIn Learning or I'd do a bunch of research on YouTube. But Udemy does seem like pretty decent. Like
Yeah.
let's step up beyond like random YouTube channels. So I think I would get a Udemy, pay $15 for whatever course that I'm also learning in college. That way I can, and then I would still read the textbook because I'm a nerd. But that way I would maximize that grade, especially if you are getting those certifications. Like you said it, and I like the sound of that. Like, oh, Microsoft certification, like those are resume points. I want them all. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
I would want them all. So I would do whatever I can. Obviously, it's not free, and that's what sucks. You have to
yeah,
balance,
yeah.
right? But if you're already spending, I don't know how much community college is, $500 to $1,000
Yeah, yeah, it's over
for,
$1,000 a semester.
yeah. So $15 on top of that doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, so two things. One, the the value like of Udemy kind of it reminds me of something that the boss that I think it was the guy that we work for or that I work for now.
Mm.
I think what he said was the power of a book is that you've got somebody that has I don't know 40 years of knowledge,
Yeah,
50 years of knowledge, 30 years, whatever it is, built up about this topic and you get it for $10.
yeah,
You get or $15 or
yeah, yeah,
whatever. And I think I probably lined Udemy's pockets because back in the day, I just thought it was so cool. I was just
yeah,
like
yeah.
$15 and I can learn web
Are
dev.
you kidding? Yeah, yeah.
$15. Meanwhile, I'm over here paying $300 for a book about HTML.
Mm.
I'm never gonna get rid of it. I'm gonna frame it at some point. I joke about it all the time. I have this sequel book, and like it's just funny to me because it's just like for me, it's just death.
Go back and read it. I'm going
I
back just
should.
just for fun. I'm reading my just for fun because I'm a nerd. I'm reading some of my old like intro to computer science books and stuff like that. And like they're not intro, right? Like the operating systems book, it is a textbook for school, and it's like I don't know how much it's really going to help, but it's also interesting. And again, for me, I like the history of it as well. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like for me, like I'm that hands-on learner type. So it's like for
yeah.
me, $15 to watch somebody
Oh
code
yeah,
along and learn this thing is
it's
just
awesome.
so powerful. The books can be too. Like, don't get me wrong, like even the sequel book that I have, it's hard for me to read, just that's just my learning style.
Yeah.
But like it's still a powerful thing to be able to go buy this. I doubt that book was $300. Maybe it was
Mm.
$60. I don't know. That's still a big deal though. I mean, it's hundreds of pages of content about MySQL for $60. And if that's your learning style, that's really cool. But for somebody like me whose learning style is Udemy, like
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely, I'm paying $15 to learn this thing. So funny story for you, Greg. I don't know if this will apply to you at all, but I think I also said this in the last episode. I when I was in C, I failed C beginner or like introduction to C. I failed it the first time I took it, and I hated it. I mean, it was so hard for me. And because I just like I couldn't get the real world context of what we
Yeah.
were doing, and not only that, I had a really tough professor. In hindsight, I like him, but he was really tough. It was just really hard. I failed it. So I took a semester off. The next semester, I if I took any classes, it was like one maybe. I didn't. I took like a whole semester off for the most part. And during that time, I took a Udemy course on C, and I was like, I'm just gonna figure this out.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I've got to figure out why this was so hard for me. And lo and behold, I learn it really well. Like at least the beginnings of
Yeah.
C or whatever. I had a really good understanding of it. And I think maybe I got like a 50% or something like that in my C class. And I went through every day to the very end. I didn't stop going. I didn't drop out. I didn't do anything. And so obviously a 50% was a real representation of my skill. It wasn't, I didn't get a 50% because I was lazy. I got a 50% because I just didn't understand it.
Mm.
It was really hard for me. So as I did this course, go back and I got like a 97%.
Yeah.
And at the end, the last day, Kevin, the professor was like, dude, what happened? Like, what changed? Like, why was this course so hard for you? And you just aced it this time. And I told him, I was like, nothing against you. This is a hard learning style for me. And I found my style. And like,
Mm.
my learning style is like online code alongs, high level, just
Yeah.
figure out why I'm doing this. And like for the rest of my college career, like the next year, it was
Yeah.
like smooth sailing because every course, like the 3 weeks before I started, I'm taking a Udemy course.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I've got to like get up to speed on this so I can just fly through it. And I did. And it was really helpful. And I feel like once I came out of college, I did have quite a bit of knowledge and I obviously had enough to get a job because I did get one. And I think that was a combination of the school and
Yeah.
connecting with people and also learning the stuff on my own kind of outside. So,
Yeah.
which kind of leads to a good question for you, Greg. Once you get the certificate, like what's the plan? Are you hoping to get an internship? Do you want to learn more after? Are you going to like do your own thing? Like what do you think is going to happen once you get the certificate?
Oh man, I mean,
Just
I
sort of
honestly
day at a
don't
time.
know. Yeah, I don't know what to expect. I don't really talk to anyone about how, like they got their first jobs or anything like that. I mean, I have friends that also have jobs and coding stuff or
Oh, cool. Okay,
here in
that's nice.
Lubbock. I really should ask them how they went about getting their first job, um, whether it was through connections or through the university that they went to. Um, yeah, I really don't know what to expect. Whatever comes my way, if it's an internship or like full time job somewhere, just I'll take whatever I can get.
And then how long is this certification? Like how
How
many
long is it?
semesters? How many semesters or how many
Oh, it's
years?
it's just 2 semesters, so I'm already halfway through the first one,
Oh, wow.
coming up on the end of it. Still don't feel like I know a lot though.
That's rough. At least there's
Yeah,
at least there's a test though. So yeah,
Yeah.
do as good as you can on. Obviously, it's like a dumb thing to say, but like do
Yeah.
do your best on that test because somebody's probably watching it, or like you can use that as like you said resume points.
Yeah.
yeah,
And we're kind of like live in the making. You're wanting to know from somebody like what did their journey look like. Obviously that's like the most useful information to anybody kind of getting into this
Hmm.
career or any
Hmm.
career, but that's kind of why we're having you on the podcast, kind of part of the
Oh yeah,
reason why I think it's exciting, because I hope that you can come back on in like 6 months to a year and be like, yeah, this is kind of what's changed, this is the journey that I've taken. um but hopefully too, like if you'll talk to me and talk to who, like I know Matt would talk to you
yeah,
too, or talk to your buddies that you have there in Lubbock, like I guess you just got to find something that what you're learning applies to in the real world. Django is a really good example of
yeah,
that. Maybe that's something worth learning kind of on the side alongside
yeah.
Python. Like just it's hard because I think there's a lot of really good Python jobs where they're doing like really back end server side data
Hmm.
crunching stuff like that. I don't know if Python's used all that much aside from Django for like front end applications.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either. I'm trying to think.
But you also don't have to do Python. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
parallels between Python and other languages. It does
yeah,
seem like realistically to get a good job off the bat, it's got to be web dev, app dev, or game dev. It's got to be one of those three,
hmm,
right? Or back end maybe, but think you'd be hard pressed to find a back end job as your first job.
I have no idea. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I
I'm not
mean,
sure. Like, if you were good, I mean, there must be entry level backend jobs like API developer or backend. You don't think so?
like a junior back end. I don't know. Would you trust that? I feel like that's like
Yeah.
I don't know, like because if you have
Yeah.
like an app or a website and there's kind of, I guess you don't want any end user problems, but like if this button doesn't work right, oh, hot fix, we'll get that
Yeah.
out,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. But like on the back end, like,
Drop table. Whoops.
oh yeah, drop
Yeah.
table, whoops, oh man, users table's empty, no
Yeah.
backups, like,
Yeah. I mean, but that's to be honest, that's the fault of the senior dev or like technical. Like,
yes.
yes.
Like, okay, so one thing I was gonna say about that is we worked with a guy. I just want to throw that out there that like I think that he maybe had worked with some other guys. I don't know how talent. I mean, I never really saw his back end skills or whatever, but he had talked about some companies that he had worked for where the back end talent pool maybe wasn't stellar, and like the
Mhm.
company kind of ended up not really working out, or the project didn't kind of work out in
I
the
see.
end. So, I mean, I guess maybe the job is there, but you also, I guess the point is you don't want to do that to somebody. Like, I
Mhm.
guess if you can find a job where like there's plenty of senior talent and they're just looking for somebody to help, maybe that's good. But like, don't go sell yourself as some
Oh
great
yeah.
backend
Of
developer to
course
some
not. Yeah.
startup and then take their company down.
Yeah. Of course not. Yeah.
I did some backend stuff for my first job, and
The Excel spreadsheet stuff.
well, not yeah, that too. I mean, there was a couple, like I had some back end responsibility, and there was a pretty major mistake that I made, probably because I was doing something that I wasn't really qualified to do, but I was
Mhm.
curious
Mhm.
and probably something I shouldn't have done. I actually took down a server for the better part of a whole night, and it was a bad day. I mean, it really wasn't good. I
Yeah.
took down two apps for the app pretty much didn't work completely for luckily it happened overnight. It was in the middle of the night, so it was like I was able to figure it out, but that was a bad time. I shouldn't have been doing back end work at the time. I guess the bigger point that I'm trying to make is like when you're doing front end work, you can kind of like piecemeal things and kind of
Yeah.
build out little
Yeah.
pages. It seems like everything on the back end is so intertwined and like it's so serious. Like
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. I
it's
understand.
such a big deal
Yeah.
that like I feel like you'd be hard pressed to find a
Yeah.
junior job.
Building an app is fine because I compile it at each stage before I release. Of course, you can still release bugs, right?
Yeah.
But it's like if I do this thing and I compile it and it breaks, well, I'll just fix that.
Yeah.
But I guess backend is kind of the same. You're doing stuff local.
No, you bring up a really good point because like when it comes to even big refactorings in an app, we're kind of spoiled because like I can go change the name of a property that like is used throughout the app and it's not going to compile if I didn't change the name. We had a bug recently at work where it was a situation like that where IntelliJ didn't refactor properly. Like he changed the name, one of the guys changed the name of something and tried to refactor throughout the project, but IntelliJ didn't pick up on it everywhere. And so it like caused a lot of issues when we deployed because it was like that name didn't get changed. And since it's not compiled, there's no way we would have known. You know what I mean?
Python, Python is also not compiled. Is that correct?
Python, you can compile a Python project because like if you're doing like a command line project, you do compile it, but Django isn't, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, because any language can be runtime or I mean, even Swift can, right? Because they have like Vapor for the back end.
Yeah.
That's an odd thought. Sorry, we're way off track, but like writing Swift for back end and not compiling it, I'm pretty sure it's not compiled. I'm pretty sure it's runtime. That would be odd. That would be a super strange experience. Plus, I'm so spoiled by Xcode's like IntelliSense and all of that. Not having that would be odd. Which brings me to a great question. What IDE do you use?
Oh yeah, what tools do you use?
So for like Python, just downloaded Python 3 and the one that came with it. At first for the HTML course, they still want us to use Notepad, just the basic Notepad.
Notepad?
Yeah,
Notepad plus plus, right?
I don't even know. It's whatever basic one comes with Microsoft.
You're kidding. No, you're kidding.
I'm not. No, like there's your lines aren't numbered or any of that. You're just supposed to write in
there.
They're
wrong.
They're wrong.
That's absolutely wrong.
They're just wrong. I need a phone number, Gregory. We're calling the police. That is not okay.
No, like
I
was just like, there's no way like this anyone would use this. First, I started using Sublime, and actually the other day, just a couple of days ago, I got what is this? Visual Studio.
VS Code.
What it's called? Yeah, VS Code. And I've only had that a couple of days, but it seems pretty awesome to me so far.
It's a game changer. Compared with Notepad, that's like criminal. That's the word I was looking for. Like they should not be doing that.
See, I would have if I didn't take this or start this Udemy course where he just basically says use Sublime or whatever. Yeah. I probably would have just gone with Notepad, and just followed what the book says. And
that's frustrating because it's such a waste of time, actually.
Well, how would they know? I guess that would be my question: is how would they know that you wrote it in Sublime versus Notepad?
Yeah, I mean they wouldn't.
They could tell you to, but
but I think the problem is it's criminal because you're not exposing them.
That is not a tool that any developer uses.
That's not a tool. So I would tell people, I would say Notepad plus plus, but it's more or less deprecated. What do we use? We used to use Notepad plus plus is fine. We used to use something called Crimson Editor. This is a long time ago, which doesn't really work anymore. Sublime used to cost money, so I didn't recommend that. But there was now it doesn't. Notepad,
does it not? You can use it for free. They have a license.
Yeah. VS Code is really good. I know I like the look of Atom, but I've never really used that. But so I just stick with VS Code. I guess Mac has a new VS Code replacement. Now I forget what it's called, but somebody just released some I think it's free IDE that's like VS Code with plugins. But yeah, Notepad, straight up Notepad or TextMate or whatever is not.
You know, Greg, I do use Notepad actually. I take back what I said. I do use Notepad at work. You know what I use it for?
Taking notes.
Taking notes. I take notes with Notepad. I do not write code with Notepad.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. And that's okay. This is one of the problems. I feel like this was one of the problems that I had even with the college that I went to. Is it's sort of set up for failure. It's why? Give me a good reason why we're actually writing. The reason is because historically, college academia is always about like memorization. And like, it's like, do you memorize this thing? Every other, I guess medicine is like that. In medicine, it makes a lot of sense. Amaya's got to memorize all sorts of sympapathetic this and sympanoenthetic. And it's like, yeah, if you're cutting into my body, please know what that means.
I hope you know what these things are.
I hope you know what that means. But like in coding, it's like, it's actually so unrealistic for any programmer to learn something and just it sticks. I'm just a computer. I just remember everything. You're not going to remember everything. Every day at work, they say if Stack Overflow were to go down tomorrow, we're all out of a job. You use it less and less as you go on. But still, it's like I can't remember everything. And honestly, some of my knowledge is sort of supplemented by just like typing things out and then like seeing if it autocompletes. Sometimes I'm like, what's the name of that function? It's something like this. You know, it's like with Notepad, that's an obvious attempt to try to get people to just memorize things without using any additional features from the IDE.
Yeah.
Unrealistic. That's not what you do in a real job.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that.
Yeah.
Do they give you a reason why?
No, I mean, I think at the beginning of the course, you know, he said you can use whatever you want, but he said if not, just use Notepad. But he didn't, you know, they don't suggest anything to you. It's just
I want to
send in your code however you want. You can use Notepad. And
I want to get his teacher. So maybe they weren't endorsing it. They should have been more specific and said like, because I would tell people absolutely do not use Notepad.
Don't.
Yeah.
That's not even a consideration.
Yeah. Like you can. Don't.
I would just say you can't. That's not an IDE. Like it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's not going to do any of the like. You have to add all of your own spacing and indentation and like that sounds terrible.
Yeah, that.
And then so for a while, were you using Notepad? Or no? Did you already know not to?
I think I did like the first assignment on it, and just because I was following the instructions, and I was like, "This is dumb. Like I'm not gonna do this."
So it was even if the teacher was trying to explain it in the nicest way possible. We still have one student in that class who, at least for one assignment, was following the instructions and did it poorly. Like part of the instructions should be go download VS Code or whatever. You don't have to use VS Code. We got all these free ones. Like when you do Udemy or LinkedIn or whatever, each teacher there will have some like preferred IDE. It might be Atom in one or VS Code in another one. Oh, hey, here's my preference. You can use anything. Don't use Notepad.
Yeah. Like just realistically, if I'm at a job, right, and I go to my boss and I say, hey, I'm just like, I know. Well, like there's the obvious dumb extreme example of Notepad. Like, hey, I'm just going to prove my knowledge. I'm going to write everything in Notepad and it's going to be great. My boss will be like, okay, you're fired. Like,
yeah, you're wasting my time.
Yeah, wasting my time. But like, especially if I came to him with any tool and I was like, hey, I found this tool, even if he had to pay for it. It's like this supplements my knowledge a little bit and helps me move quicker. He'd be like, absolutely. Like the goal of any business is to run more efficiently. Like I just can't imagine them. It would never happen. They would never say anything like that. But it's just like mind boggling that would even be like a recommendation. That's not a real world tool that you'd actually use. A job would fire you if they came up to you and you were using it.
Imagine if we were showing some code to like our VP of engineering and we came up and like had Notepad cracked open.
How do you even read it? No syntax highlighting.
No syntax highlighting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like,
it would. I really like if I had a junior programmer come up to me and showed me something on Notepad, like that they were working on, not just some abstract problem. Like they were just like, "Hey, I was writing this code and this doesn't compile."
Yeah. No kidding.
What are you doing? Yeah. That's pretty. It's funny but sad.
Yeah.
Like how are you supposed? But and honestly, it is sad. Criminal because you only have 2 semesters. To be honest, it's going to be tough because they have to shove a whole bunch of knowledge in your head and get you to like certificate complete within only 2 semesters. And like, are they trying to just get you to pass the test or help you get a job? And that's one of the dangers.
Gregory, I'm going to have you build a house and I'm going to give you some nails, but no hammer. Just figure it out. Just nail it into the wood. You don't need a hammer. It's fine.
With your hand.
Yeah, it's like
Ow.
hit your head on it, like. But like literally, that's a good comparison because like these are tools that are used in programming to make the job more efficient, make it easier. And if you're learning to build houses, guess what? You're going to use a hammer. You're probably not going to use a hammer. You're going to use a nail gun. You're going to use the most efficient tool for the job, and the most efficient tool is not Notepad.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're dwelling in that.
It's because it's shocking. That was shocking.
That is shocking. That's because whenever you said not even Notepad plus plus, people don't even use Notepad plus plus anymore. I don't think, but like that's at least kind of understandable. But like Notepad,
I don't even know what that is.
I didn't even have that experience. It was annoying what we had to do when I was at CSN. They wanted to limit the features of the IDE while still giving you the decent, like, common feature set of an IDE. So what we had to do was log into this server. It was like an Ubuntu server that we had at school.
Oh, cool.
And we would run the IDE text editor program that they had on there. And it was a visual one. Like, it would pop up like a GUI window or whatever that we could use. Oh, you there?
Yeah, sorry. I was checking my battery. It's at 21%.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so anyways, we had to do that, but that was still better because it had syntax highlighting, it auto-indented, auto-braced stuff. So
how much battery did you say you have? Are you still good?
21%.
Okay, well,
I'll be good for a little bit.
Yeah, we're kind of getting close to the end anyway.
Do they teach you any command line stuff? You obviously have to. I shouldn't say obviously. You're running Python via the command line, right?
I honestly don't even know what command line is.
Like you type in, like you're on Windows, like cmd.exe. You have to type in like.
How are you running this program?
How do you run the program?
Do you not run your Python programs yet?
Oh no, like I run it so I get the file and I save it as, .html. I don't know if that's what y'all are talking about or not. And then
what about Python? Specifically Python, how do you run those programs?
I just with the Python thing that it came with when I downloaded. Hold up.
Is it a program or is it a black screen with like a little?
No, it's the IDLE for Python 3.8. It's not the black screen thing.
Oh, okay.
Does it have like a run button at the top or something?
Yeah. It's got the run, all that.
Okay, I see.
Debug or whatever.
Yeah, that's actually
it's all up there. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's actually good. A lot of times when I was in school, I had this thing called Code Runner, and it was like the same thing, but it supported like multiple languages. So eventually, at some point, probably you're going to be running okay. Well, here's a question. So, have you written any Python applications that require input from the user?
Yeah.
How does this program that you're talking about? How does it let you do that?
So on the IDLE, like you run it, and it just pops up another window that's running the code.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so that little window is like a simulated command line. Yeah. So like if you weren't using this little Python program, you would just go to the Windows command prompt or Mac command prompt terminal, whatever, and you'd like go to the file, and using the command line, you'd compile the file and then run it like from there. And then that little window that you're talking about, that would just be right there. That would just be the command line that you're already using. That's kind of what we were asking.
Yeah.
You also, yeah. So I'm curious at what point you're going to kind of get there. It sounds like even though he's not using the command line, he's writing command line applications.
Yeah.
It's just kind of being run a different
way. One of the problems, I never installed Python on Windows. I don't know if it's included, but probably not. It's included in Mac, but you can update it. One of the problems is if you download Python, you'd probably have to include it in your environment variables. So it's like a lot of stuff. It's small, but like it's a lot of stuff for somebody who's like brand new.
Yeah.
Like I used to just have a script that I would give to my students and say, run this.
Yeah.
It will like set up their environment variables and stuff for them.
Did the school tell you to use this program?
Yeah, it's like you Google Python 3 or whatever, and it's like one of the first links.
Okay.
So this certificate that you're getting, what is the official name of it? What is the certificate about?
Oh man, I can't remember the specific name.
It's not Python though, right? It's like just general programming.
Like certification in web development.
Yeah, I think
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I should honestly probably look it up again at some point.
Probably.
Do you know if it's focused on web development?
Honestly, can't tell you.
So okay,
I
so I'm
don't
just
know.
what prompted you to take this certificate? Did you just see like, oh, programming certificate, I'm gonna do that?
Yeah, pretty much. Just yeah, I saw. I said you'll learn Python, HTML, Java. And I was like, heard a lot of that stuff. Sounds like what I need. I'm
Those
gonna take
sound
that.
good. Yeah, I like that. I like that attitude because that is the attitude that we had when we started the podcast. And that was some of the advice that Randy gave too. Just get started.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
get started. So it never hurts to get started. Like even if you stumble and like hopefully this certification like leads you somewhere. I mean, as long as you don't quit, it will always lead you somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the certification. I've gained some knowledge. Okay, maybe I still can't get a job. Let me go get some more knowledge. Let me practice more. Let me go do this thing. Right. And you'll just build it up. But
Dude, what you should do on the side, just as just some personal advice, I just think one of these skills, if you like Python, if you think that that's the way you want to go, I wouldn't get too stuck on any one language. I feel
Mhm.
like you ended up using 100 languages, and
Yeah.
every job. Hey, do you know PHP, Laravel, Java, Kotlin,
Mhm.
Swift, like Objective C? Do you know every? And do you have 5 years of experience? Great, you're a good fit for our junior position. Anyways, I wouldn't get too stuck on one language. But if you do like Python in particular or Java, like find some real world thing that has a bunch of jobs for it and maybe start kind of studying that on the side. If you like Java, like
Mhm.
maybe try Android. I mean, it's kind of shifting to Kotlin, but like there's still no reason why you couldn't
Yeah.
learn to build an app in Java, and a lot of that will
It just
translate
transfers over. Yeah.
to Kotlin, yeah. So I would try that. I
yeah.
mean, does Android or iOS apps kind of like excite you at all, or
It definitely sounds cool.
I
Like,
mean, he's using one of the phones right now.
yeah? And I mean, there's like just tons of web and app jobs and game jobs. It just seems
Yeah.
like that's the way to go. But I feel like with apps in particular or web development, those are the easiest to find like a junior developer job for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if over the next like few months that you're still in this course, if you could just kind of like supplementarily learn that stuff on the side, like there's really no reason why after you're done with this certificate you couldn't get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You realistically could, but you'd have to probably start now trying to like learn that stuff. But
Mhm.
that's all the stuff, like that's what Matt was saying. It's all just really high level stuff. Like like if you're going to take a Udemy course on Android, you're not going to learn the fundamentals.
But that's fine right now. To
I
be
think
honest,
it's yeah.
I think that's fine.
That's the stuff that's going to get you a job, and the
Yeah.
certificate will be a good resume booster, and it might be that thing that like kind of gets you started. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
at some point, you're going to have to get that like real training. You might be able to find a job or an internship that's willing to teach you possibly, but that's going to be a far fewer selection
Mhm.
than like if you actually learn a little bit and try to get a junior dev job.
Yeah.
You know what I
yeah.
mean? So yeah, so like I guess we oh, do you have a question?
No. No. No.
I was just gonna say, so like kind of towards the end of the podcast, it's kind of funny because we've had a lot of like really experienced developers come on and give advice to like junior developers, but like do you have any advice? Do you have anything that like somebody else that's in your position, like something that works for you that you'd recommend to somebody else or
Or like if you could give advice to yourself a year ago, or like
yeah.
or like 5 years ago, or whatever, what advice would you give yourself? Like if this is what you want to do, you think right now that you want to get into programming, so you're trying it. What advice would you give yourself 4 months ago or a year ago?
Just get started. Honestly, like
I like
I
it.
love that. Yeah.
That was
even
our
if you're not like that interested, if you're just slightly interested, just try it out for a little bit. You might like it, you might not. Who knows? But just get started. See where it goes.
Cool. I like that.
yeah, that was our first episode of the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
I guess then the last thing to kind of like end things for this episode, like I hope that we can have you back on the podcast maybe 6 months from now, a year from now. Where do you want to say you are when you come back on the podcast? Like if we have you on a year from now, like where do you hope you are?
Oh man, where do I hope I am?
Yeah, like because you've kind of danced around like, oh, I like this, I like that. No, like where if you could have just your thing, would you be working on Halo 5 or whatever it is, Halo 6 or like what would you be working on? Where would you be?
like making games sounds fun, but I mean, I've heard a lot of bad things about it too, about like the crunch time and all that. But honestly, like I would just want to say like I feel comfortable and like I've built some experience, you know, learning some stuff, and you know, I don't feel as lost, I guess. You know.
Yeah.
That's not a, I mean, that's obviously that's a good thing to hope for.
Yeah.
Everyone feels lost. That's definitely, that's the big thing. Everyone feels lost at the beginning. We're always learning. That's one of the things about being a programmer is you are always learning. That feeling of being lost will go away to a certain extent, but yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a good thing for the school.
Yeah.
Like students are saying like, well, I feel really lost.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is like it's you like being hard on yourself for not knowing more is never going to go away.
Yeah.
It's just that you're going to be more comfortable not knowing. And like that's kind of where I'm at. Like if I jump into some technology that I don't know at work or something, it's not nearly as daunting anymore. It's just like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Like
Yeah,
whatever. I've seen enough to
we say this all the time. You just have to get uncomfortable. No, you have to be
Yeah.
comfortable feeling uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's the job.
And like right now, if you jumped into a project with a bunch of files that each were 100 lines of code, it might be like, oh my God, what is going on here? But like eventually, what I think you learn to do, because we're all human, like it's not like I can interpret 1,000 files any better than you can. We really can't. It's just a matter of like being able to kind of compartmentalize. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to look at this one piece at a time.
Like, yeah, where are the groupings? And we just, from our experience, we know how certain things might be grouped. Somebody else might do it differently, but like I think that's how that like the brain works. It's like, okay, well, here's this group for this code. Let me explore that later, but here's this other group for this other code.
Yeah, you'll just kind of find patterns. And one thing that I like to do with junior developers is when they come to me with like a really complex problem, I'll say, I do this at work pretty often with one of the guys, and just let's walk through it. Like, because I will have to do the same thing that you're going to have to do. The problem is that when you're kind of new and you're like in this learning phase, this junior phase, whatever, you're just like, this problem is so big that I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't even know, like, it's overwhelming. There's just so much at play here to make this thing possible. So it's like, I'm no different than you. I'm still a human. Our brains are wired to do one thing at a time. So like, let's do that. Let's go through this one piece at a time. Let's find the place that we need to start writing code, and then we'll kind of go from there. Like, and we'll start connecting the dots one piece at a time.
Yeah.
So like that's the thing that you're going to get good at. I think that's what makes you comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're just like, dang, that's a big feature, but I'm confident that I can walk through it one piece at a time. Or if it's a bug, I can walk through that bug one step at a time until I get to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
So take that advice, apply that as much as you can. I know that's super abstract, but like it's the best advice I can give. When things get really overwhelming, don't stop until you finish. Keep at it. Don't like finish the projects that you start. That's like the best advice I give anybody.
Yeah.
If you're going to start on something, definitely finish it. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't move on until you figured out the thing that you're doing. That's the best advice I can give. Gregory, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
we really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been really cool. It's been really cool to get your perspective. I really want to have you on in like a year, and we'll see where you're at. So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Maybe even next semester. Just I'm curious. We'll see.
Just want to see where you're at after a semester. I want to follow up with you and Patrick and all these people that are kind of like working through this journey and kind of see where you guys make it. So cool. Thanks again. That's episode 22, everybody, and we'll see y'all next week.